Storytime with Andy and Amanda.
Right, Amanda, what are we doing today?
We're doing story time.
Yeah, what's story time?
It is what it says on the tin. It's
Yeah.
story time.
Well, you've actually, the title of people wondering is story time with,
Andy and Amanda.
yeah, episode number 10. Unfortunately, this month, guys, we don't have the special guests, so it's just me and
Amanda.
Yeah, me and V. Right, so we've still got plenty of pieces for you to share today. Now, a couple of quick announcements actually on this as before we carry on as well. From next month, the Mothership piece or piece podcast, Reading in Bed, is on the same feed as this. What's happening to Reading in Bed for next month, Amanda?
We're going to be doing fortnightly episodes instead of monthly, and they're probably going to be about more or less half the length.
Yeah, for various reasons, Josh, that's why. So there should be about 25 to 30-minute episodes from September. So what does that mean for story time with Andy and Amanda? Well, God, that's a mouthful, isn't it? One gone. Story time with Andy and Amanda.
Yeah, story time will never die.
Yeah, now obviously, what's going on with that, Amanda? And then obviously, like, explain to people on that.
I think we're just going to carry on as normal.
Yeah.
We might like shuffle an episode and shuffle it in between the two episodes, but there'll still be a monthly story time every month.
Yeah, there will be. This episode, it may change a little bit in the scheduling, but it's still going to happen monthly. So, and also before we go into the piece to podcast today, I know Amanda's got an additional announcement, Amanda, haven't you?
Yeah, my little mini zombie series about a zombie influencer, which is on YouTube, called My Big Fat Zombie Life. The second episode is now online. And you should be able to find it by searching My Big Fat Zombie Life on YouTube. I can't imagine there's going to be too much more coming up in the search results if you search for that.
No, it's also on Instagram as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's a bit more difficult.
Yeah, but people wondering, probably best in this case, sticking to YouTube, I would have said straight away with it, so that's fine. Right, okay, Amanda, what is story time with Andy and Amanda?
We read poems or tell stories, and sometimes we read other bits of pieces from other people.
Yeah, which is going to be part of what's going to happen later on today. So now this month, I'm going to start off now. And this is a poem I wrote fairly recently as well. So, long story short, if anyone knows me at the moment, knows I'm just about to go into redundancy status at the day job, unfortunately. And when this happened, I give me a touch of reflection, really, because the job I do is, I'm not going into what the job is because that's irrelevant to this piece, but it's the sort of job I've had a lot of managers over the years, and I wanted to try and get it down to a narrative, and I think it fairly works fairly well, this piece. Anyway, so it's simply called Ex-Bosses. Pete left to become a bailiff 3 months after I started, while Dom stood down a few weeks into January after becoming diabetic and fracturing his foot within 24 hours. I only remember Khalid sacking 3 members of our team in the space of a month. Then Holly became next, had to deal with the mess, what was left of us all after that. Sweet, polite Clem from France, who was always such a gent, got promoted, much to his surprise, when I was off, dealing with my then partner after her brother got run down. Christine, who came in the year after that, while I was scrumping in Arundel, got together with that twat from the opposite team weeks after arriving, who I bumped into at the cooperative after they both left. I forget why I moved on to the 3rd floor afterwards, but struggled with the work and the boss, Tom, who I heard all kinds of talk about, before my health nosedived and I went back to the 2nd floor. After that, there was Kerry, Kelly, Kirsty, Paul, and John, among others, spread out across my memories of 10 years in one job, now whittling away into nothing, colouring my vision in redundancy. A candle glowing inside out, vibrating like a wire, the light turning out in itself, falling through a tear, walking through the door out, running sideways into my past, the further I walked.
Yeah, I like that piece.
It's an
Very
interesting,
nostalgic as well.
yeah. Tell me, you think it's an interesting form to attempt at, Amanda, isn't it? Because you think really I've
Yeah,
compressed a lot of memories in that piece in over 10 years, really, and it's been good days, been good bad days of that job, but it is what it is, isn't it? So, said, okay,
yeah.
we're over to you now for your first piece this month. What have you got?
Okay, so I've not written much of anything apart from copywriting work, which I can't read out. So I'm going to read the prologue from my book Ghost to Me that came out over 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
He lurked in the shadows, waiting and hoping she wouldn't take a different route. This was a usual route, though. He knew that. He knew her. Obscured by the two looming buildings he stood between, he pleaded with whatever higher power there was for tonight to be no different. Maybe she would get a call from a friend and decide to go in a different direction. A shift finished 5 minutes earlier. The lurker mentally traced her steps to this point. 2 minutes at her pace, unless she worked overtime or got a lift. He took a deep breath. Don't mess this up, he thought, unsure whether the words were to himself or to her. By changing her plans and deciding not to walk in his direction, despite spending the last 2 weeks passing the spot he waited at now. It would be just like her to mess up his planning, just like all of them. Then came the clicking of her heels and the smell of perfume, confirming it was her, the scent of apple which prompted him to lick his lips. Or perhaps it was the anticipation of what he was about to do. None of the food she ever gave him made him feel this way. Patience, he told himself, as his feet seemed to develop a mind of their own, tugging at his legs in an attempt to cut her off. 1 second, his legs readied themselves. Now! He sprang out of his hiding place, darting after her until she turned around. He toyed with her for a while, allowing her to think she might have a chance at escape. The real fear showed in her eyes when he grabbed her arms, pinning them to her sides. He smiled when he saw her long red hair. It almost looked like a flame underneath the street lamp. He was about to extinguish that fire. She recognized the familiar face. Her body went rigid as he reached into his jacket and pulled out the knife, reminding him of the time he had to pretend to be a plank in the school play. She would have made a good plank, but that wasn't her role tonight. He had gone through this over and over in his mind. The victim struggled, unsuccessfully, of course, but it was fun. His mind was already skipping ahead to the outcome. What are you? She began, bringing him back to reality, which wasn't playing out like he imagined it would. Something needed to be done to get things back on track. This was a moment to savour, not rush. He kept his hands on her arms and tilted his head to kiss her lips. Her breath was minty. The source of the mint flavour, her chewing gum, was still in her mouth. He rolled it onto his tongue and removed his hand from her right arm so he could take the gum and pocket it. He wanted a souvenir. That would be better than nothing. She screamed, forcing him to clamp her mouth shut with his hand. Even the pain of teeth mauling at his hand wasn't enough to deter him. The struggle had begun.
Ooh. Now, obviously, as Jay said, it was a couple of years ago, Ghost to Me, Amanda, now, wasn't it?
It came out in March 2020.
Yeah, I thought it. I remember right, that coming out as well. Now, obviously, if people are wondering what is Ghost to Me, you better tell people very briefly, since you just read out
It,
a pretty
it's a
disturbing
novel.
prologue.
Yeah, it's a novel about a woman who discovers she's a ghost, and she finds herself in the morgue standing next to her own dead body, and she goes on like well, not an adventure, I suppose, but she makes it a mission to try and solve her own murder.
Yeah, no, I said it. That's pretty well it, really, and it's a fascinating book. I think was that your last to date novel, Amanda? Was it?
Yeah, that was the last full novel that I've had
Yeah,
published.
yeah. Don't worry, the guys. I'm sure Amanda will have another surprise for us in a couple of years' time on that one. So,
One
but yeah,
day.
but it's a great novel, it really is. Anyway, so okay. Well, I bet we better carry on, Amanda. But it's one of my favorite. I know people wondering. I always say this is one of my favorite pieces. Yours, that is as well. Great stuff. Okay, who's next?
You're next.
Okay. If you're wondering recent as well, last couple of months, me and Amanda have been going over to an in-person writing workshop in Stratford Library, which is usually the third Thursday of the month normally. And this piece I'm going to do now was the piece I wrote, the last one actually. So this one's called Martian Shoplifter in Asda. Inspector Brooks, it was noted, after they caught the woman shoplifting, was expected to say she'd done it because she couldn't afford any of the clothes he'd caught her with. Certainly not the fact she tried stealing them for her boyfriend, who she said was from Mars. Mars? The journalist in the Daily Mirror noted in a surprised tone. Yeah, she wasn't on anything for you to say that, Brooks cut in, for the journalist can carry on. Just has to do security guards here. What did they say? The journalist yawned. They said she told them when they grabbed her, my boyfriend's 9 foot tall, and he'll zap the pair of you if you don't let me go. The inspector looked at his notepad. The journalist now started giggling. Did he have fins in his head and winged pointy feet? No, but he blew the fuck out of the half of the roof of his laser gun, the inspector answered.
That's one of a few Martian pieces you've written recently, isn't it?
Yeah, just the way it seems to have gone recently, doesn't it? He's like, there is at least, there's about another 3 I've done. I think it's the 4th one, actually. Just completely unconnected is the way it goes, isn't it? That
Yeah,
one
you
book.
need
Yeah,
to put them in the book together, though. The
Well,
Martian
just-
Chronicles.
Well, Amanda has mentioned this before to me now. I think the estate of Ray Bradbury may have an objection to that because they've got a book called, he's got a book called The Martian Chronicles. So, anyway, over to Amanda for a second and final piece this month, isn't it?
Okay, get my phone to work. So I've had a poem accepted in an anthology by a publisher called Night Terrors Novels. So that gives you a hint of the type of things that they publish. And the anthology is called There Used to Be a House Here. And I'm going to read the poem, which is called The House Fell Down. First, a small hole appeared in the ceiling, and the water trickled in, soaking through everything, not caring whether it meant anything. Then the roof collapsed. It didn't matter that the things I cherished were soaked beyond repair. I couldn't find them underneath the rubble. But leaving the house wasn't an option, just in case there was anything left to save. And by the time I realised there wasn't, it was already too late, and the water had risen all the way up to my head. So I tried to swim away. The walls began to crumble around me, leaving me trapped inside, and I sunk right to the bottom. Before I closed my eyes, I found that I could still breathe. I took it as a sign. I may be trapped down here, but I'm still alive. I'm still holding on.
Blimey, that's grim. Even by your standards, Amanda, that one's grim. What was
It's a nice, cheerful poem.
you and cheerful? I very much doubt it. Now, seriously, I don't remember you writing this piece. Tell us a bit about the background of it.
I think I wrote this a couple of years ago, and it wasn't really written as a horror poem, actually. It was just like, I think my dad had passed away quite recently, and it was more like a sort of metaphor and like struggling and like the water and drowning and stuff like that.
Right. Tremendous piece, but it's grim. I've been wondering, we go regular to a group in Stockport called Write Out Loud Stockport. And what does John Keane say, Amanda, that runs that group?
But good.
Okay, that is grim but good, right? Definitely. So, right, okay, yeah. Well, I've got to be honest with you, I've done a fairly mellow month. This is a month myself, so I'm going to read out some to lighten things up in the last bit, really. I've got my Edward Lear book next to me at the moment here called Complete Nonsense. So I'm going to read out, and these have not got any of these have got titles. So I'm going to read out half a dozen not haiku, sorry, correction, limericks that he's wrote. So, Amanda, you want me to start?
Yeah.
There was an old person of mould who shrank from sensations of cold. So he purchased some muffs, some furs and some fluffs, and wrapped himself up from the cold.
Okay.
Okay. There was an old man of Peru who watched his wife making a stew. But once by mistake in a stove she did bake, that unfortunate man of Peru. There was an old man of Melrose who walked on the tips of his toes, but they said it isn't pleasant to see you at present, you stupid old man of Melrose.
I like that one.
There was an old man of the south who had an immoderate mouth, for in swallowing a dish that was quite full of fish, he was choked. That old man of the south.
That explains why you don't eat fish.
Exactly. There was an old man on some rocks who shut his wife up in a box. When she said, "Let me out," he exclaimed without doubt, "You will pass all your life in that box."
Yeah, that's Andy reading his fantasies out again. That's why
Right.
I'm getting rid of all the boxes tonight.
I think I would have haved you after that one. Right, okay, last one. There was an old man who said, "Hush! I perceive a young bird in the bush." When they said, "Is it small?" he replied, "Not at all. It is 4 times as big as the bush." But anyway, guys and girls, okay, that's enough nonsense from the wonderful Edward Lear. If he was still alive, I'd encourage him to come on the podcast, but I think he's been dead for over 100 years, so I think that'd be hard, Amanda, don't you? So
Not impossible though. We'll get a Ouija board. We'll do it on Halloween. You'll be fine. You'll be re.
But anyway, guys and girls, okay, seriously, that's it for today for Storytime. Roughly about 2 weeks' time, we will be back with the next episode of Reading in Bed. And all being well for September's Storytime, we do have a guest lined up. But I'll come back to you on that one, won't we, Amanda? So,
Yeah, exclusive guest. A
exclusive
surprise.
Surprise. And no, it's not him either, right? He's dead as well, right? Right, seriously, guys. Okie dokie. That's it from Andy N.
And that's it from Mandy here.
Oh, we're just changing names again here. So, for seriously, guys, say bye, Amanda.
Bye.
See you all soon, guys.
Storytime with Andy and Amanda.